Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for August 8th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to discuss the latest film and TV news, and in our feature presentation, you can hear our interview with Christopher Robin director Marc Forster. This is Slash Film's senior writer Ben Pearson, and joining me today are weekend editor Brad Oman
Hey, that's me.
and writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey everyone.
So, right before we started recording this episode, some news broke about Disney and James Gunn. HT, you wrote it up for the site. What do we know?
Yes, so according to a report from The Hollywood Reporter, Disney is still intending to use James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 script, which he had been working on before he was abruptly fired at the end of July. And this is somewhat a surprise and somewhat not a surprise because it's been nearly a month since his firing and Disney has still not announced a replacement to direct and write the third Guardians of the Galaxy film, which is strange because you would think that they'd intend to keep on going one of their most immensely popular series in Marvel, but this is apparently the route they're going. And it's kind of a cap on this whole mess that has happened in the fallout of James Gunn's firing, in which people have kind of giving an outpouring of support for him because of the sort of controversial reason that he has been fired. And apparently, it's more than just nice words that he's receiving. He's apparently receiving concrete movie offers as well, including from major studios like Warner Brothers, which has poached filmmakers from Marvel before to work on their sort of struggling DC universe. So this is kind of all resulted in maybe Disney stuck on what they're trying to do with James Gunn as he's negotiating his exit from the studio, which actually may incur a payout of $7 to $10 million for Gunn if he wants to leave the studio. And if not, then he might just move over to Warner Brothers. So that's basically the update now that we have with the James Gunn situation.
Okay, so this is Brad. I know you have a lot of thoughts about this. Tell me what you're thinking here.
Yeah, I mean, this is just getting ridiculous. Now, Disney needs to, hurry up and figure out what they're doing and make a decision and let everybody know whether they're going to stick to their guns, no pun intended, and keep James Gunn fired or rehire them, because all the speculation is maddening. You know, there have been rumors going around that James Gunn's script wasn't going to be used, and there have been rumors that it sounds like people on the inside don't think he'll get rehired. Now, if studios elsewhere are willing to work with James Gunn, I think that just what should prove to Disney that this is something that needs to be blown over and not even worry about it, because this was something that was dealt with already 5 to 6 years ago. He apologized. Everyone knew that this was something that it was in his past, and it was accepted, and everyone was willing to move on and give him a chance. And so now we're at this point where we're dealing with it because of all the bullshit that was spurred up by, just vindictive people. And like I said, if the rest of Hollywood is willing to work with James Gunn, then Disney should reconsider and, swallow their pride and be like, look, we made a mistake. Welcome James Gunn back and, let him direct Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Otherwise, there's no reason to make it. I don't want to see anybody else direct it. And, it sets a bad precedent. And I hope that Disney is, doing some kind of work behind the scenes, whether it's focus group testing or polls to figure out if this is something that the general public will actually be mad about. I would be willing to wager that most of the audience going to see Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't even have an idea that this is going on. Mm-hmm. So, I want them to figure this out so that it's not, in this weird state of limbo anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting that they said that they're going to, that they theoretically could still use the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 script that he wrote, because I think the language in his initial firing was very serious. They were like, we have severed all business ties with James Gunn, and that seems like, even, of course I am right there with you, Brad, and I want him to be reinstated, but I sort of feel like if they're severing ties, then they shouldn't use his script, because,
well,
you know what I mean?
Well, they still could. I mean, technically they still could, and their statement would still be accurate, because I'm sure he's already been paid for that script, and so, that's their script to do what they want to do with.
Well,
so,
yeah. I'm certainly not arguing that he owns the rights to it or anything, but I just think for them to be so short-sighted like this, it's so crazy. And I wonder if, like you guys were talking about, all these other studios, if they're showing all of this interest, if Disney is sort of going to get, like the equivalent of getting jealous, basically, like in a relationship, like somebody's hanging out with some other other person, and your ex is looking back and being like, oh wow, actually maybe I let something go here that I shouldn't have. So I wonder if all, especially Warner Brothers and DC, and we don't know specifically that we know that Warner Brothers is interested in Gunn, but we don't know exactly what for. That's sort of us drawing a line and speculating that maybe he could end up directing something for the DC subsidiary over there. But I really wonder if this could be the final thing that ultimately convinces Disney that, hey, if all these other places are interested in working with him, maybe we should just hire him back and realize and admit our mistake that we gave in to this this far right organization that was operating in bad faith from the very beginning. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. Aishi, do you have any final thoughts on this to wrap this up?
Yeah, I think if Disney keeps going at the on the path that it is now, but with using James Gunn's script but not rehiring back to direct the film, it's kind of a sort of spineless way out for them in terms of just like they basically fired him to keep the integrity of the company, but they're kind of going behind his back by using this script that he intended to direct in the first place and to shepherd, and now it seems it's icky.
Yeah, I guess one last thing I'll say is that James Gunn has always been the heart and soul of the Guardians franchise, and if for some reason this whole thing plays out where they don't end up hiring him back, it's very possible that's what happens, and they do end up using his script, at least fans of the Guardians franchise will know that voice will be retained, even though the direction will be different. I feel like the script is so key for those movies, and the understanding of those characters is so tied, inextricably linked with James Gunn and his understanding of those characters. So I guess this is, if this ends up panning out in, I guess there are a couple different ways this could end up panning out, even if he's not the director of this movie when all is said and done. But hopefully if they use his script, we'll at least get to feel his presence in the movie in some way. So let's move on to another big news item that broke this morning, and that is that the Oscars are adding a new film category to their awards. Brad, what's going on here?
Yeah, so there was a message sent out to Academy members today by the board after they recently met and figured out some official things behind the scenes, including the re-election of John Bailey as president of the Academy for another year. But along with that, they announced a few things that they had decided during the recent board gathering, and it means that there are some changes on the way for the Oscars telecast that will be coming early next year. One of the first things that they announced is that they're going to try to strictly limit the Oscars telecast to 3 hours. They know that the show constantly runs over. It's usually anywhere between 3 and 4 hours. Sometimes it's even gone longer. And they want to try and make sure that it's not a daunting task for people to watch it. It's a hope to improve ratings. And the way that they're doing that is they're going to be cutting out airing some certain awards being presented during the ceremony. So they haven't said which ones, but some select categories will still be given out live at the Dolby Theater on the night of the telecast. And then they will have the winning moments basically edited and shown sometime later in the broadcast as like a very quick highlight sometime during the show.
But we don't know what those categories are going to be yet, right?
No, yeah, they haven't said which categories. If I were a betting man, I would say it would be something in the technical side, or maybe even the entire short film category altogether, animated and live action, since that's something that a lot of general audiences aren't really familiar with anyway. Mm-hmm. But honestly, this is really frustrating because obviously it's all an effort to boost ratings and get more people to watch. But it also gives the shaft to a lot of people where this is the spotlight that they get, and people get to see, they get recognized, and people get to see this happen on live television, and millions of people see, these up and coming filmmakers, and they're celebrating their craft. And so I imagine whichever category are the ones that are announced to be cut from the actual telecast. I'm sure that the people involved with those categories are going to raise some hell once that decision is made. There's so much bloat to cut during the Oscars telecast. Like, I don't know why you have to start with just getting rid of the award, which is the entire point of the night anyway.
Right. But they're introducing a different thing as well.
Yeah, so they're introducing a new category, and it doesn't have an official name yet, but they said that it will be recognizing quote unquote outstanding achievement in popular film. However, they haven't given any eligibility requirements or details about the award, and they're supposed to release them at some point down the road. Based on the wording, obviously this is something that is meant to get more attention to the awards from general audiences who may not be familiar with the usual art house and indie films that are constantly recognized by the Academy. But at the same time, one has to wonder exactly what the point of this award is beyond that, because how are they going to determine what is a quote unquote popular film? And is this award going to be determined by, the audience? Will it be kind of like a People's Choice Award where they choose which movie they think should be honored with an Oscar that year? What it really seems like, though, is it seems like this sort of backup Oscar that they're going to give to movies that aren't quite Academy caliber enough to get a Best Picture nomination. And it feels like another reactionary move to try and appease audiences who were upset that The Dark Knight didn't get a Best Picture nomination. And after that happened, we saw that the Academy decided to change their rules to allow anywhere between 5 and 10 nominees so that a movie like The Dark Knight had a chance at getting nominated. Unfortunately, that not often has that been the case. It's just allowed, more art house and indie movies to make it into that category, with the exception of some movies like, Mad Max Fury Road, and whatnot being considered for that. Avatar as well, you could probably say, is one of them. But really, this just seems like a case where they're trying to pander to audiences, get more people to watch. But this Oscar, if anything, is going to be more insulting to those movies, because it's going to be like, sorry, you weren't good enough for the regular one, but here's, this sloppy seconds Oscar.
Yeah, it really feels like a consolation prize. Go ahead, HT.
I'm on the same board as you, Brad, because it feels like this is a move to try to reframe the Oscars as more like populist, but I feel like it makes them feel more elitist, because it's a chance for them to kind of shut out popular good films like Black Panther, for example, which is getting lots of Oscar buzz this year, but not a lot of people are expecting to get a Best Picture nomination because it's a genre film, and those movies generally get shut out a lot. And it just feels like it's basically telling them like they're not worthy of being a Best Picture nomination or being part of like the top 5. And I don't think this is a very popular move, and I don't think it's a good idea on the part of the Oscars, just because there's just so much backlash that they can immediately get from whatever they choose for this nomination. And I do want to say, if they wanted to reward popular films, so-called, they could create a category for things like stunt work, which has been a really pivotal part of the Hollywood industry, but has often been overlooked and undervalued for so long.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think they have the Taurus Awards, which is like the stunt specific awards, but it's nowhere near on the, like Brad was saying earlier about like those people theoretically being relegated to a tiny little edited moment at the end of the show. It's like that's your moment to sort of take the stage in front of your peers and the world and have your work be acknowledged. And for stunt people to not be acknowledged still in the year, this is 2018 for God's sake, and they haven't included this category yet. This is so crazy. So the one sort of hopeful thing I have is I saw that journalist Mark Harris, who writes for Vulture and a bunch of other places, said on Twitter that like because the ruling here, the wording here rather, is so nebulous, and the Academy themselves haven't even figured out the definitions of these terms and what constitutes a popular film, that maybe this is sort of a test kind of thing where they're just like putting it out there, and theoretically they could see the negative response that this is getting and change their minds, or maybe try to revamp the whole thing moving forward. So I'm not sure. We'll definitely keep you guys posted on this as more about it comes out.
With regards to the stunt thing, I did read something interesting, and I wish I could remember who tweeted it, but they said that they had talked to a stunt person or somebody who works in the stunt field. And they actually said that a lot of people in the stunt world aren't necessarily supportive of an Oscar for stunts, because they feel like if they make that an award, then a lot of people are going to die just trying to get it.
Oh, wow. I had not even considered that. That's interesting. But I feel like there's still, like I said, there's the Taurus Awards exist. as is, but maybe, and I know those like are very well regarded within the stunt community, but I don't know if that's, I guess, the extra notoriety of winning an Oscar might be what would drive people to that, I guess, in that situation. That's something to think about. I had never really considered that. Okay, so let's move on to our next item, and that is the next project from director Duncan Jones, who helmed Moon and Source Code and a bunch of other movies. HT, what is Duncan Jones working on next?
So Duncan Jones will be directing his first TV series with an adaptation of the spy thriller called Killer Intent. So this is based off of a popular first novel in Tony Kent's series of spy thrillers centered around an intelligence agent named Joe Dempsey. And so it follows this sort of London conspiracy that is sparked by an attempted assassination and sort of spirals into this chaos that threatens to overwhelm the British government. And it's based on a book that was published early this year and will now be moving into a TV series produced by Duncan Jones' indie studio Liberty Films. So yeah, this is his first TV project that he's ever done. Duncan Jones, as you know, is known best for Moon, which was his debut directorial feature. And he's also directed Source Code, Warcraft, and most recently the Netflix film Mute. And he's been kind of, I don't want to say on a downward trend since Moon, but Moon was definitely a really promising, really great breakout film. And since then, he's kind of struggled to make a firm impact since then. So maybe a TV series would be a really interesting and really good next step for him.
Yeah, it sounds like a cool synopsis, and I know that he's definitely like one of those filmmakers who's very open on Twitter and seems like a genuinely good person. So I think I'm always interested, and he's a good director as well. So I'm very interested to see this show and what he does. Do we know what network this is going to be on yet, or is it still sort of in the too early?
It's still in it's still in development, so there's no network attached yet.
Okay. Cool. Brad, do you have any thoughts about Duncan Jones at all as a director?
Yeah, it feels like he's kind of taken the same trajectory as Neil Blomkamp, where he had this amazing, debut and has yet to capture anything as good as that yet. And while his movies have had some interesting ideas and some solid sequences and, a very, confident approach, they haven't really, felt like, the same kind of filmmaker has been behind the movies that what he was when he was behind Moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. So our next item, this one is kind of interesting. It's a company called New TV, that's a working title. That's a terrible name for a company. It's one word, New TV. But apparently they're going to get a real name sometime in the next couple weeks. But Jeffrey Katzenberg is one of the co-founders of this company. And Katzenberg, for those of you who don't know, used to be the chairman of Walt Disney Studios. He was the co-founder of DreamWorks. If you seen any DreamWorks movies, you might recognize DreamWorks SKG. He is the K in SKG there, and he has founded this company called New TV, and their aim is to basically change the way that audiences watch mobile content. And so basically his company just raised $1 billion to do this, and they're looking to launch by the end of 2019 with a premium lineup of original short-form series comprising episodes of 10 minutes each. The service will have 2 subscription tiers, like an advertising-free plan and then an advertising-light option like Hulu. And apparently top talent in Hollywood are interested in participating in this and putting together content for this new platform. So I just wanted to throw this out to you guys really quickly. A few years ago, Katzenberg was behind this crazy idea that he really wanted to create more episodes of Breaking Bad after the finale aired and distribute them in 6-minute chunks and have the audience pay for each chunk, sort of like an on-demand kind of thing. And that idea, he threw that idea out as soon as he realized what the actual ending of Breaking Bad was, because he realized it wouldn't really make any sense for what he was going on, or what he had in mind there. But it seems like that underlying concept of people paying for small chunks of stories is is something that stuck with him. And I'm wondering for you guys, do you think that this sounds like something that you would be interested in subscribing to? I mean, it would be yet another subscription service probably, but like 10-minute episodes with, super high-end talent. I mean, are you guys interested in short form storytelling like that? HT, what do you think?
I think it's possible to do it well, but I don't know if I would subscribe just based on a premise. I would have to find out who is actually the talent behind this and whether it's something that really encourages like creativity or something experimental. That would be really cool. But for now, it just sounds kind of like a weird cash grab more than a creative opportunity. So I don't know. It would have to be reframed for me, or at least just kind of like tell me who the directors are or whoever,
Right.
like if this is a chance to like work on animation or something cool or weird. I don't know. As it is now, I don't really, it doesn't really appeal to me.
What do you think, Brad? Does this have potential for you?
Not particularly. I mean, I'm not against short form storytelling, but like HT said, it was really gonna take a lot to convince me to take the time to watch, just because it feels like if it's not worth, watching on something like television or Netflix or Hulu or, something like that, then it feels like it's just not really worth paying much attention to. And maybe that's just because I'm old and like I'm the kind of person who like I don't necessarily have anything that like I watch loyally on things like YouTube and stuff like that. But, so maybe this is something for like the next generation of viewers who have
Yeah.
grown up watching Twitch streams and, YouTube channels and all that stuff. So it's not something that I'm necessarily on board with, but if they got the right people involved and they were making, stuff that people started talking about, then I might be able to convince to give it a look.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is definitely geared toward a generation that's like right below us who absolutely grew up, watching short form content on a regular basis like that. And I'm just wondering, like, I feel like there's a lot of potential here. I mean, it sounds like, as HT mentioned, it sort of sounds like a cash grab at this stage, but I feel like if they get the right people involved, they could easily make, like, I'm just trying to think of any movie, like Ocean's 9 or something could conceivably play out over the course of X number of 10-minute episodes. They could apparently with $1 billion in their first round of fundraising. That's a lot of money, and I forgot to mention also that every single major Hollywood studio has backed this. They're investors in this. So this is not just, some guy's wild harebrained idea. This is something that every studio and this Chinese tech company called Alibaba, which is worth over $500 billion, is investing in, and they are considering this to be like a serious option. So I'm right there with you guys in that I would like more information, but I also, with all those big names attached and all the money that they have at their disposal and the access to the money that they have, I would not be remotely surprised to see them get some serious, huge people, A-list stars involved and tell a longer story just broken up over little chunks like this. And I think that's what they're basically trying to do, is reach out to younger audiences like that. But depending on the content, depending on the franchise and whatever they start to get involved with, this has a lot of potential. So we'll see where it goes. We'll keep you guys apprised of that as new TV or whatever it ultimately ends up being called moves forward. So one other news item that I wanted to mention was an American Gladiators reboot is on the way. Brad, tell us about that.
Yeah, so American Gladiators is this classic physical competition series that aired in the late 80s and early to mid 90s. It was extremely popular to the point where there were plenty of reruns that aired in syndication on Spike TV that people loved watching all the time as this, vintage show, simply because the physical competitions were so cool, and the show had this, cheesy 80s retro flair to it. And the show was actually rebooted in 2008 on NBC with a whole new lineup of gladiators and updated competitions. Even Gina Carano from the Fast and Furious franchise and Haywire got her showbiz start as one of the gladiators on that show named Crush. And so now they're going to try it again. MGM is apparently shopping around an updated version of the show. And this time it has, of all people, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, the writers, directors, and producers of This Is the End. They also wrote Superbad. And apparently they're going to executive produce this new series iteration. That's pretty much all we know for now. That it's pretty standard as far as what the show will be. Just a new version of American Gladiators, new Gladiator cast, new challenges and that kind of thing. But I do wonder if like there might be some kind of comedic edge thrown in there because it's Rogan and Goldberg, or if this is just them trying to expand their brand and continue to have solid gigs as producers so that they have some to fall back on if their feature or television career ever starts to go a different direction, then maybe they have just all these projects that they have in their backlog for constant royalties. That's kind of a cynical thing, but it is a show business, so like, and it seems like maybe could be a new trend because Kevin Hart has that new series on CBS, Total Knockout, that is another physical competition series that he hosts and executive produces as well. So maybe we're looking at comedians getting into these different reality competition shows, and trying to add some flair to it. But I love American Gladiators. I loved the new version when it came out in 2008. I recorded it and watched it whenever it was on. So I'll be interested to see how this one turns out.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what they do, if anything, to really like change up the style of this, because I mean it's such an inherently cheesy concept, but it is like undeniably watchable. Like I don't really watch reality TV, but I think I would probably tune into this just because I loved that stuff as a kid. Like the idea of like dive rolling across a floor and launching Nerf guns at a target as people are trying to like take you out. I mean, it's so fun. And maybe, I'm very curious, like you've said, Brad, to see if Rogan and Goldberg are going to insert themselves or their sensibilities into this in any way, or if they're just also fans growing up and wanted to sort of keep this thing alive. So we'll keep you guys posted on that when we learn any more about it. Our final news item for the day, I just wanted to, it's basically a PSA from HT because I know she's a big Harry Potter fan, and what's going on in the Harry Potter universe, HT?
Harry Potter universe is coming back to theaters. So all 8 Harry Potter films, as well as the spin-off Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, are being shown at Cinemark XD theaters across the country for 1 week, dubbed Wizarding World XD Week, from August 31st to September 6th, 2018. So this is a sort of big showcase in anticipation of the upcoming release of Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, which comes out this November. And this is a really affordable, actually, little Wizarding World XD week because every film you can buy tickets for $5 per film, or if you want to splurge and see all of the films, you can get a limited quantity festival pass for $25, which grants access to all 9 movies, as well as a few collectibles, including a keychain, commemorative festival badge, and a refillable cup. So this is all a very cool thing, and will probably fill the hole in the hearts of everyone who miss ABC Family Harry Potter weekends, or rather freeform Harry Potter weekends. So now you can go back to theaters and binge watch Harry Potter films until your eyes bleed.
So Brad, I know you're also a big fan of the Harry Potter franchise. Is a marathon like this something that you would be interested in doing, or are you more like, I'm okay with just watching them at home?
No, I'd actually be totally down to go see these in theaters again. It's it's been 17 years now since the first one came out, and I think 11 years maybe. No, not 11 years, like 7 years since the last one came out, maybe something like that. Anyway, it's been a while since I've seen them in theaters. I love the Harry Potter movies. If anything, I would like to go and revisit some of the older ones on the big screen, like Prisoner of Azkaban and Goblet of Fire, which are 2 of my favorites from the franchise. But the only problem is that the Cinemark locations that this is happening at, there's not one that's actually near me. So I'd have to really go out of my way to do it. And since they're playing, over the span of a week, it's not really something that I can easily take advantage of, unfortunately.
Well, if you drove 40 minutes to get a Jeff Goldblum Funko Pop, maybe you can go check this out.
Yeah, but I'm not going to drive 40 minutes every day for a 2.5 hour movie.
What kind of fan are you, Brad? That's all I have to say. Okay, so that's going to wrap up the news portion of the show. I want to lead really quickly into our feature presentation, which is I had a chance to speak with director Marc Forster on the phone. I think it was last week, to ask him about Christopher Robin. He was the director of that movie, and HT and I both talked about that on Monday's Water Cooler episode of the podcast, so you can listen to that episode to get more of our thoughts about the film itself. But in terms of this conversation with Forster, I asked him about stepping into the Disney machine. What was that like? If the Paddington franchise impacted this movie at all. Asked him to explain this random gladiator reference that he snuck into the movie, and a little bit more. So here is my interview with Marc Forster. So what was it about this story that made you think, yes, I'm going to make this my next project?
It's basically sort of, it started, I was on a flight with my daughter, and she was watching on her iPad a little Pooh cartoon, and she was 6 years old at the time, and as she's watching, she suddenly turns to me and said, hey, can you make finally a movie for kids or for me? And I said to her, because she said, oh, yeah, all the other movies are grown-ups and too dark and this and that. And I said, okay, why don't we make Pooh? She turns to me, exactly, that's what we do, Pooh. And it was obviously more jokingly. And sort of the stars aligned, and 3 years later, we're here, and I made this Pooh movie. And sort of, I was always a big fan of the Tower of Pooh and Pooh as a character, and because there's ultimately, this incredible childlike humor with him, but then he has these quotes that Millen came up with, which are, have this incredible depth, but also are very absurdly funny.
Yeah, can you talk about that character specifically? Because Pooh is sort of a tricky character to get right. You really have to sort of walk a fine line with that character.
Yes, no, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it's this fine line of, him just to embody his spirit, but we are trying to really follow, sort of the nostalgia and the feeling of how he was created and how he speaks. And obviously then what I also wanted to do is where I did cast Jim Cummings as the voice of Pooh, because he has done it for so long, and to give it a certain authenticity and someone who has inhabited the character for the last 30 years. And at the same time, even the performance is different from the cartoon. He still, once you hear his voice, it almost gives you like this, you suddenly feel like this cozy warm blanket over you and feel like you have arrived at home.
Mm-hmm. The personality of the characters is probably something you couldn't change too much, but was there any temptation to reimagine the look of them at all?
My intention was at the beginning that I wanted to go back to the early Shepard drawings and then the early sort of black and white Disney drawings once Disney bought the IP and look at them both. And ultimately, I had my entire, I wanted to be truthful, as possible to the Shepard drawings. And I had my whole office filled with fabrics and tried different fabrics in the light, and I wanted to make sure that there's certain wear and tear on them, because young Christopher Robin played with those animals, and once he leaves, you want to feel that they've been used and been hugged and loved. And sort of when ultimately, with the sweater, for instance, Jenny Bevan, our costume designer, knitted that sweater by hand, and then it was very hard to, translate it into digital sort of version of it. But it was always, I tried to be authentic, but still give it a new look.
Cool. Coming into this huge Disney machine, how many requirements are already in place for a movie like this? Like, are there elements that the studio insists on being included?
No, I think, I made very early on a presentation of how I saw the movie, what I wanted to do with the movie, and we were all very much aligned to make the same movie. And once I started prepping and designing the characters, they seemed to embrace the vision and the look, so I never had any issues with that.
Gotcha. Did I catch a gladiator reference in this movie with Pooh's hand in the wheat? Did I see that right?
Yeah, I did that purely out of as a joke, and my DP first said to me, "What are you doing? It's not original." I said, "No, it's hilarious." It's Pooh as the gladiator touching the flowers.
Was there a worry that the Paddington movies might have already cornered the cute and cuddly bear market?
No, it's. I think Paddington is a bear. This is a stuffed animal, a toy, and I think they're very different personality-wise. And I think also the Poohism and how Pooh's behavior is very different. than Paddington, and I think the two of them have not that much in common.
Mm-hmm.
So in regard to character personality, and obviously Paddington is much more active.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't worried about that.
And can you tell me about the color palette for this movie? How did you arrive at the visual look of the film?
There's a painter called Lowry I really like, who painted London during that time period a lot, which was a reference for me. Who basically in London, in the city of London, there was during that time lots of fog and they used coal, so it wasn't as clean. And I tried to have not as almost no green in the city. Obviously, just a little park where they meet, but which is sort of a reminiscence of 100 Acre Woods. But then once he leaves the city, going out in the country where it becomes more sunny, and he re-enters 100 Acre Woods, which is again foggy until he comes out of the Heffalump pit, which from then on is the sun is shining again.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever any consideration given to making the 100 Acre Wood more of a magical kind of place? It sort of feels almost like it came straight out of the old book, but was there ever any conversations about making it more visually stunning?
No, actually, I never had that desire. Because I always wanted to be authentic to the original book, and it was always, basically just a lovely forest. It was never a magical place. It was never kind of an Alice in Wonderland situation.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about working with Ewan McGregor? What were the challenges for him acting opposite nothing for a good portion of this film?
I must say, every time we did this, I had made the stuffed animal. I blocked the shot, had him there, and then when he was removed, Ewan just acted to air, and he just did an extraordinary job, because it's very hard to act to air and make believe that you're connecting with something, because normally you have an actor or some eyes or some object to connect with, but he just had to make that make believe.
And filming in that way, does it require more takes than a traditional scene of two human actors?
No, to be honest, Ewan was so dialed in that it was just such a natural flow for him. It was really extraordinary.
What was the most challenging aspect of this production for you?
The challenging aspect is I want to make that feel very dealing with the stuffed animals from beginning on, a lot of handheld movements that you're really in there with them and you feel really you believe them. And at the end of it, that was very hard to achieve. Because you usually you have in Paddington you have locked off shots or motion control. We didn't have that. We basically do a reference pass with the bear, take the bear out, and then do another reference pass just with the handheld camera, which isn't the same pass because they're all different. And it's very hard for the animators to then insert the bear and redo the shot in post. So that's pretty challenging to do.
Was there anything that you were able to slip into the movie that you're particularly proud of? Something that maybe allowed you to put your personal stamp on the film?
I think that there are lots of those, but in regard to how I shot it and did certain things. But the main thing for me, what I'm very excited and proud of, is that I got 3 Richard Sherman songs out of Richard Sherman. That he was. I thought when I'm getting one, I would be blessed, but he ultimately, when I spoke to him, and he suddenly was inspired and wrote 3 songs for the movie, and that's I'm really excited and proud of that we got these magical songs from him.
Excellent. I think I probably have time for about one more question with you, so I want to throw it to you for a second. I know you're about to embark on this big press tour, and part of what comes with that is getting asked the same questions over and over again. I'm just wondering, are there any stories from the set or the making of the movie that you don't think you're going to be asked about, but that you want to bring to light, whether it's a memory or some little thing that happened that is sort of more obscure or off the beaten path?
It's we shot down in Ashdown Forest, right? That's almost where we built our pool bridge. It was almost the same river, which was connected to the AML estate. And when we were shooting there out in the forest, it was almost in England. The weather can be very tricky, and every time, like where the log is, the location I found the log where the lonely tree is there. Every time I was at that location, the weather was just perfect, exactly what I needed. The clouds were there, or the sunset was there, and that usually doesn't happen. It was pure magic, and we shot part of that there in 65 millimeter. All these wide shots, and it was all when you made enough movies, that this never happens, and you almost felt like, oh, we're here in this land, and it's almost sort of the creation of Pooh is shining up on us, that everything goes just perfectly fine, exactly the way I envision it, and you have no control over it.
Awesome. All right, Marc. Well, thanks very much for speaking with me. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Take care.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. And right before we go, where can people find more of our work online? HT, let's start with you.
You can find me writing every day at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at Hoai-Tran Bui.
Brad?
You can find me at slashfilm.com, of course, also on Twitter at Ethan_Anderton, and on the old podcasting site iTunes with my podcast, Go Flix Yourself.
You can find me writing at slashfilm.com as well. You can find me on Twitter at Ben Pearson, and you can find more about all the stories we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes of this episode. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find at slashfilm.com. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, and concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com, and make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast. That really helps us out a lot. Tell your friends, spread the word about the show any way you can. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.